I'm delighted to be with you here this afternoon because realising the hidden potential of Ireland's towns is a really important issue to me, but it is also a priority of mine. And as Conor has outlined, I'm responsible for the rollout of the CEDRA report, which was a very detailed and very extensive consultation that was conducted up and down the whole of Ireland with rural communities. And actually, instead of the CEDRA report being, negative or, saying what was wrong with rural Ireland, actually there was very little negativity in that report at all. What it actually came back saying was, we know there is potential in rural Ireland, and we know that there is potential in communities up and down the whole of rural Ireland, that they just wanted to participate in their own recovery and in their own destiny. So perhaps that sometimes we might think, and when the media reports about rural Ireland isn't just about a post office and about a Garda station. Rural Ireland, while they are very, very important and there are challenges, and we're facing up to those challenges, and you know that Minister Fitzgerald, rural crime is a big issue. Minister Fitzgerald is addressing all of those issues as well. But for my own part, I really want to capture the potential that I know exists in communities, and the essence of what I want to do is to do a capacity building within these towns and villages and communities that will lead to sustainable jobs, in turn lead to sustainable communities that support the post office, that support the local school, that support the local economic drivers. Now, I suppose if I could just begin this afternoon with welcoming, I know there's a number of councillors here with us also this afternoon. Welcome the CEO, Colette Byrne from Kilkenny County Council. And I think there's even friends. I think there might even be a relative or two actually out there in the audience. So it's just to welcome you all. I've heard that you had a very lively session this morning, so I will really look forward to what the report from this conference. And, if Michael, if you could just get it to me as soon as possible, because I have, or just hot off the press, but we were just had a meeting last night in the Department of the Environment where we are drawing up a rural charter on rural Ireland. That policy document is going to set out the road that we want to take for rural Ireland into the future, and this will lead to a white paper in 2016. And that will also lead to, we will be setting up a rural forum where people will be able to come together and discuss the issues that we see and the challenges. But it's not only issues and challenges, there are huge opportunities that exist in rural Ireland. And I often challenge the media to come out beyond the M50 and actually see what is actually going on in rural Ireland. Now, I've said this before as well. I know we're very cosmopolitan here in Kilkenny, but for the purposes of the CEDRA report, we are considered rural. I also believe that the timing of this conference it's very timely. Realising the hidden potential of Ireland's towns, it's very appropriate. And it's so much in tune with the role that I am trying to do myself in government. And part of my job in government is, as I said before, to see and the implementation of the CEDRA report. And we are working our way through those 34 recommendations. One of my aim as a minister is to ensure that national and local systems and programmes work in a coordinated way to facilitate rural communities, including and especially their towns and villages, to support their own development. And that is what the CEDRA report is all about. It's not about government coming down to communities saying, this is our plan, this is what we want you to do. We want the communities to take ownership themselves of what they want, because unless the plan is theirs, it's not going to work. And we can all point to reports all over the place that haven't worked because the ownership wasn't taken by the communities themselves. So the CEDRA report has really focused on the need for a more integrated and coordinated approach between government and other agencies charged with supporting the development of aspects of the rural economy. It's essential that government work in a cooperative and partnership way, and working with all the people who are in and around this landscape, the local authorities, the Heritage Council, the local development companies are very, very important, because we know how the local development companies know how to do that heavy lifting, that really one-to-one engagement with the communities that is so important. You can be assured that I'm working towards this as a matter of urgency in order to ensure that the impact of policy frameworks and subsequent funding is maximised to support the sustainable development of rural communities. And we refer to Cathal O'Donoghue, as Conor has said. Cathal is the head of Teagasc Rural Economy and Development Programme, and he was a very large part of the CEDRA report, and he was indeed the think tank behind that CEDRA report, because we had to base it very much on data. And I am very fond of, not that I'm very fond of data or anything, but I'm very, very fond of good data, because in government, when you're developing policies, your policies have to be informed by really good, reliable data. So that's very, very important. One crucial area of support to rural Ireland is, of course, the leader elements of the Rural Development Programme. It's an EU co-funded programme that has been supporting the development of rural Ireland since the early 90s. The new leader programme places the formulation of robust local development strategies at local level by local action groups at its heart. And that's what I said about the development companies being really able to engage with local communities. The leader elements of that rural development programme, that is the ring-fenced support to rural communities. The selection process at the moment is very, very much underway, and that supports the delivery of the leader elements of the programme from 2014 to 2020. The government also recently announced the funding of 30 million over 6 years for a new town and village renewal scheme. And the scheme will begin in 2016 with a budget of 5 million. Now, I know this 30 million actually got really bad press, but it's so... I find it quite funny that even though it got such bad press, I have to say that most of the emails now on my computer, the most of phone calls that we are taking in the office is, what are we going to do with this 30 million and how do we get our hands on it? So small and all as it might seem, people are very, very interested. And I know that in communities, very small grants, people in communities are very, very grateful for small amounts of money that they get, and we do get value for money for it, and they do make those small grants go extremely far. While titled Village and Town Renewal, the ethos of the scheme is broad. I know it's called Village Renewal, but I want to change renewal actually to regeneration, because I want a focus also on enterprise and how we regenerate the towns and the villages. So it's not only just on renewal. And I want to keep the scheme flexible, because when I speak to communities, and everybody speaks about the competitive process, and I sometimes recoil a little bit myself when I'm dealing with officials about the competitive process, because I say that the competitive process is grand and everything is fine and it's lovely and it ticks all the boxes. The problem is that sometimes the people that you need to reach are not the competitive people. So that's the argument I have sometimes against the competitive process, and that is why we have introduced our rural economic development zones as well, which was one of the recommendations out of the CEDRA report. Now, we have committed 4 million to this scheme, and there was a wide range of projects at the end of September, and local authorities are now working to implement these projects in their local areas. And following on from this pilot, we will be providing a further 5 million for an expanded REDS scheme under the leader elements of the Rural Development Programme. So, to explain what the REDS are, I know towns and villages across Ireland that are not doing very, very well. I know that there is potential in those towns and villages and in those communities. I know if we, in a very targeted way, identify these towns and villages, put in the supports, get the communities to do their development plans, and I know there's all sorts of development plans going on as well at the moment, but we will be dovetailing into all of those strategies and allow the communities to take ownership of these local development strategies. I know that some really good work will come out of that. We are going to study these pilot areas as well. And because there are pilot areas, we will be able to kind of, while we will be studying them, there will be a certain amount of flexibility in those as well. Now, we are working those through the local authorities, because the local authorities have that great expertise themselves, and they know also the towns and villages within their own ambit that aren't doing very well, and they also know what we have to do together to get those working and to support the rejuvenation of our towns and villages beginning next year. So the rollout of the REDS will begin all across Ireland, but we do need to study them first to see how do we make changes, what have we learned, is it value for money, before we roll it out everywhere. But this is a very good initiative and a very good scheme that works extremely well in Great Britain and indeed some parts of Europe. And Europe have a great interest in this new initiative called the Rural Economic Development Zones. I know sometimes it might be a little bit hard, for people to get their head around what exactly is the scheme. The scheme is an area we know isn't performing very well, but does have the potential, and we're looking at developing tourism, developing food, artisan food production. What is the potential to bring on those communities? Now, because the role that I have is a huge amount of coordination and trying to bring all of the elements together into one strategy, I have to say that I'm very heartened to see the way the local authorities and the Heritage Council have come together and found common ground. They're each differing roles around towns and villages in Ireland, but there is expertise there that we will be using, that we will need to look at, and these are the people who know how to do that at first hand. And our heritage is extremely important. So at the outset, we would want strategies that are recognising the heritage, and we all know the economics that our heritage and our culture bring to Ireland. I don't have the up-to-date statistics, but I do know it's quite striking when you see that the value that you get for our heritage and our heritage tourism, as we can really attest to that in Kilkenny City. As chairperson of the Kilkenny Heritage Forum from 2007 until my election in 2011, I saw firsthand how it linked what was happening in the county with the ideas and issues at a national and even an international level. This form of cooperation yields benefits both at local and at national level. The Heritage Fora are also a good example of this type of network that we need at local level to represent community interests and to work with the local authorities and the Heritage Council to deliver economic benefits and identify opportunities that benefit everybody. The way the Heritage Fora work could be replicated for towns and villages across Ireland, and I am supporting the Heritage Council's proposal to put in place a rural and towns network. I can see the need for grassroots support that is informed by a national framework of clear thinking. I have no doubt that such a structure has the potential to deliver change and improvement for many of our towns across the country. As I said before, sometimes it's hard to get community projects going. People have limited times, and more often than not, we are working, a lot with people who volunteer their time for the benefit of their community. And so sometimes we have to bring them together and get them, everybody is very willing to help in all of these, and they're all doing it for the betterment of their community. We need to do it kind of on and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, we just need to put it on a little bit of a more professional footing. And I know that the local authorities and local interest groups will get these projects off the ground. Projects similar to the Irish Wall Towns Network is a very good example of how the agencies can come together and deliver for towns working with the local community. And there is a greater shift now in the local authorities to engage with our public, with the public, all across the, our reform in local government is all about putting people first and dealing with the people all across our counties and to listen to what they have to say. It's important that as we strive to support rural communities, that we ensure that all members of the community have an opportunity to engage and participate, and that is very important, that everybody's voice gets to be heard and that everybody can participate in what's happening in their own community. And that's why I'm also responsible for the SITECAP programme, which is a social inclusion programme which works very much on a one-to-one basis with disadvantaged communities, to help them look at their issues, to help them get them job ready. And it's also looking at economic development in community development, and that is the way we will drive our own local economies as well. Now, I have read the Heritage Council's policy proposals for Ireland's towns, which has been launched here today with great interest. And I will do what I can to see the various departments of government get behind it. With my colleague Minister Kelly, we are formulating a national planning framework at the moment, and this focuses on towns. We have decided that this, what we keep talking about, balanced regional development, and sometimes, they're just flippant words, but we really want people to engage with that planning framework, because good forward planning is always essential in how we plan our communities, towns and villages into the future. So everybody should really engage with that process and make their views known, their concerns or whatever, but you really need to engage with that process. I understand there was a workshop yesterday about the possibility of extending the Living City Tax Incentive Scheme, and I know how beneficial it would be if it were rolled out to towns, and I know they do need a stimulus, to get them, as sometimes even as I'm driving to Dublin, possibly because I now have this job, I consciously look above the shops to see what ones are in darkness, what ones that are filled with lights, and I do that in every town and village I travel through in Ireland. So I have written to the Minister for Finance, Michael Noonan. I've also written to Brendan Howlin as well to look, and I think the local authorities could come on board with this one as well, to see, is there something innovative that we can do together to revive our towns and villages. And I think we can do it. I think we know how. I think we probably just need to be maybe a little bit disciplined about how we go about our business. But I'm looking forward to working with you all in the future as well. And, I'm just saying, if I get re-elected, towns and villages will certainly be my real priority. But anyway, that's the part of political broadcast. I couldn't end my address to you this afternoon without taking on this beautiful brochure, an introduction to some of our cultural jewels. And it's not to say, but that is my own hometown. And my own hometown is featured very, very much in this. And we have definitely some gems, and some gems that I'm trying to get opened up as well. But you can look and see, and we do know that when a town or a village is made to look attractive, is more appealing, people will come and visit. But it's not only for the people who will come and visit and hopefully leave, buy a cup of coffee and go into the local shop, buy an ice cream and leave some money in a particular town or village. We do know that. But we do know that when a place is attractive, people do want to come and be there. But the most important one for me is that if the place is attractive itself, people will also enjoy living there. So it's not just about the visitors that we're trying to attract. It's about how do we keep the communities themselves living and being happy in their own community. And I think that is hugely important. And I also know that there is a lot of job creation potential in these towns and villages. We just need to find our strategies, and we just need to work together to deliver for towns and villages across Ireland. Again, I can't emphasise enough how important towns and villages are to me, but also just, I suppose, to go back on a couple of things. I'm not sure if Dervla Ledgeridge is here. I know that there are council staff here, but before I became into the role in which I am now, I remember doing a lot of work with Dervla on historic graveyards, and I always thought it was a great scheme, because historic graveyards aren't only places where people are buried, and of course you all know that, but they are a great way of being able to tell the economics of the time in which the people were buried in. So we have any amount of historic graveyards out there who can tell us lots and lots and inform lots of, and give us that data that I'm talking about. So that is a very good scheme that delivered a very good feel factor in communities on very little money, and it was great value for money. So keep up the good work, Dervla, and indeed the council, and indeed the Heritage Council and the local development companies as well. You do great work, and I'm very grateful to you for the good work that you do, and thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing the result of your deliberations again here this afternoon. Thanks again for inviting me.